Greetings, everyone. This is Andrew Conley with Clean Fuels Ohio, and I'm joined today by Alex Slaymaker from SmartColumbus to talk about EVSE charging stations best practices for different site hosts and some of SmartColumbus's experience. So, Alex, great to have you. Is there any further introduction you want to share with our audience for yourself for SmartColumbus?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Andrew. And I'm really excited to be here with you. So, my name is Alex Slaymaker, and I help organizations, communities, and businesses innovate sustainably. And in my current role, I get to lead the sustainability portfolio of work for Smart Columbus. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Smart Columbus, we're an organization that's really advancing what is new and next at the intersection of technology and community good in Central Ohio. And within that scope, we're really focused on helping the community reach carbon neutrality and then also increasing digital equity because we know we can't be a prosperous region without leading in those areas. And in my role, more specifically at Smart Columbus, I get to coach employers in Central Ohio on sustainability strategies and also get to work with MORBC and the city of Columbus and so many amazing partners like Clean Fuels Ohio to really advance specific projects. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little more later, but over the last, few years, I was able to play a pivotal role in executing a $10 million grant from Paul G. Allen Philanthropies that was really focused on advancing public and private sector electrification in the Columbus region. And a little bit in terms of my background, I earned a master's degree in sustainable solutions from Arizona State University and have about 10 years of experience helping companies and organizations reduce emissions while increasing competitiveness and resilience. So love this stuff, could talk about it for days, and am excited to chat with you, Andrew.
Yeah, and the Smart Columbus public-private partnership model is really welcome and impactful, and obviously you all are partners we enjoy working with. Can you dig in a little more or provide some more context to that origins of Smart Columbus and some of the historic successes around the Smart Cities Challenge and the Paul G. Allen Foundation grant?
Totally, yeah, happy to do that. At Smart Columbus, we really know that, a smart region is a carbon neutral and equitable region, and we are really thinking about how we achieve those goals, quickly and thoughtfully and at scale. And we know that transportation is, the largest slice of the pie locally when it comes to emissions. And with a single occupancy vehicle rate as high as we have in our community, vehicle electrification has to be a huge part of our efforts to combat climate change and ensure long-term competitiveness for the region. And so those are some of the drivers behind why we really knew we had to lean into this space. And going back a few years now, in 2016, Columbus won the first ever Smart Cities Challenge, which was a national challenge. And we're really proud of that. And we're able to achieve a lot because of the amazing partnerships in the community. And we actually grew the EV market over 500% since 2017 and installed over 1,100 charging ports in the region too, which is, a really huge accomplishment and, really gets, Andrew, to what you were saying about this public-private partnership model we have in the community and how everyone has this spirit of collaboration and this willingness to kind of dream big. And because of all of that, we are actually the fastest growing EV market in the Midwest now, and we plan to continue to build upon that growth through collective action and really just working together. So we're thinking at Smart Columbus right now with Clean Fuels Ohio, with MORBC, with AEP Ohio, with all these different partners about how we can ensure every fleet in the region has experience with EVs, how every workplace in the region, can have EV charging, and every neighborhood in the community can have EV charging access. But, honestly, we need to do a lot better job making EV adoption more accessible and ensuring that the workforce is really ready to lean into the electrified economy, which, I know we'll probably get into later. And I know that's a passion of yours as well, Andrew. But this is big stuff. I mean, we're talking about transforming the entire economy, how we move goods, how we move people. So it's pretty exciting work.
Yeah, it certainly is big stuff and it is exciting. And we are talking to you as part of our Transportation Solutions Showcase. Obviously, electric vehicles and EV charging is a major solution towards that. carbon neutrality goal that we share with Smart Columbus. Um, we do have a number of conversations that I've had that you can view on our solution showcase with fleets in particular. But for our conversation today, Alex, I really want to hone in on more of those public focused charging stations, particularly charging stations at destinations, at multi-unit residences like apartment complexes, and some of the fast chargers Smart Columbus has had experience with to date, and really focus on kind of which destinations are best from your experience for each of those. What kind of chargers do you typically see, and what kind of fees are charged for users of those? So if maybe we could start with those public destinations, because a lot of those 1,100 chargers are public, as I understand it, correct?
Yeah, that's spot on. And the majority of stations that are public in Central Ohio are free too, which a lot of people don't know. So I love sharing that fun fact. But yeah, it's a really good series of questions. And to figure out, what stations should be located where, we think it's really important to coordinate charging planning efforts really at all levels, right? So state level, regional level, and, neighborhoods too. And I know the Ohio Department of Transportation is really leaning into this with their statewide corridor study, which I believe Clean Fuels Ohio helped author. So great work on that. That definitely is a best practice. And for those corridor locations that are public charging, you definitely want to give people the ability to charge up fast and then get on their way. So we're definitely looking at DC fast for those locations. And it's also really important to have redundancy at those locations too, to decrease the likelihood of someone having to wait or find another location because one charger isn't working on site or something like this. So that's really, really important work to help reduce, anxiety about road trips and going to Cleveland for the weekend, that type of thing. So really excited to see that work happening. And then on a regional level, a few years ago, our team actually worked with Clean Fuels and other partners to identify gaps in the regional charging ecosystem. And then at that point, the gaps we identified, we did work with the AEP Ohio rebate program to really fill most of the gaps we identified originally, which is pretty exciting. And most of those stations, to your point, Andrew, were installed, at workplaces, but those stations were also public facing too. So, employees could use it, residents could use it for the most part, which is pretty exciting. And I know a lot of people right now are speculating about the future of workplace charging because of the increase in remote work. And, we still think it's imperative to be investing in workplace charging. And we've identified some best practices as well with installing that charging. And these are actually best practices for public charging in general, I would say, like having really clear signage that's visible, making sure you're having the parking space marked clearly. People need to know what the space is dedicated for, and if they should move after they're not done charging. You should just have very clear usage policies and procedures and signage and wayfinding and that type of thing. And so we work with companies to make sure that they're adopting those best practices. And I'm not sure if this stat still holds or not, but we've definitely, heard that employees are 600% more likely to go electric if they have workplace charging. And we know that's especially critical for folks that don't have charging at home, right? So can talk more about maybe the neighborhood-based EV charging planning, if you think that'd be interesting, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all those comments and want to just reiterate and kind of follow up on several of them. So overall, you mentioned fleets versus motorists, and we have content focused on fleets, but fleets tend to charge at their home base whenever they can and aren't really relying on chargers in the wild, where EV motorists, particularly on those longer trips on travel corridors like interstates, do rely on some of those fast charging public chargers. But largely the bulk of charging for motorists, as we know, happens either at home first or at work second, basically the places where they're gonna stay for multiple hours a day. And so I know Smart Columbus has focused significantly on workplace charging, since individual homeowners kind of take care of that on their own. but workplaces need to do that on behalf of their employees, and multi-unit residences often need some focus as kind of the two. So um, in terms of all the best practices and things Smart Columbus has seen, you just referred to some key resources. Is there somewhere you'd want to direct our listeners to get more information on some of those best practices on your website or elsewhere?
Yeah, totally. So we put together some playbooks that are basically just like short blog posts that go into some of these best practice lessons for, EVSE siting and a variety of different electrification projects as well. So definitely want to refer folks to that resource because we tried to put all of those lessons learned in one place.
Yeah, and we'll link to those in our Transportation Solution Showcase site. For those who got here that way, you can see those links, as well as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, has a wealth of resources on that we'll link to as well. So without going into all the weeds on that, I think you mentioned equity as kind of a last point. Certainly, if you live in a multi-unit
Mhm.
dwelling, it's kind of it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to know, like, do I have permission? If I don't have a dedicated spot, how can we get a charger in the complex? Or even if you're just a resident who, lives, rents their house, doesn't have a personal garage or driveway and parks on the street, those same barriers can sometimes apply. So maybe you could leave us with some thoughts on how best we can deploy chargers going forward with equity in mind.
Totally. Yeah. I think more granular modeling is really important. We need to be looking at the neighborhood level to figure out where the gaps are in charging and how to co-locate charging stations with community amenities and make sure there's also EV programming along with it and programs that also help increase access to EVs in general, right? So that could be EV car share, that could be used EV programs, it could be a variety of different tactics, but we need to be really thoughtful and intentional about what that looks like in order to expand access for kind of the electrification transition. And there's some interesting technologies that we've been exploring, with Clean Fuels and other partners that can help achieve this goal. One of those kind of cool technologies is actually charging stations that leverage street poles, so like light poles in the community, so you can actually use that conduit and add a charging station, maybe for on-street parking or near on-street parking, without having to, dig up the sidewalk and install a charging station. It really reduces costs and then also decreases how much stuff you're adding to the sidewalks. So you can reserve the sidewalks for people, families, pets, etc., which is truly ideal. So we're exploring that solution as an interesting way to help alleviate some of those issues in neighborhoods.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know from other conversations we've had, certainly City of Columbus is undergoing a smart street lighting set of upgrades with particular focus in some of the neighborhoods that right now have the least EVSE. So that could be a great win-win since those upgrades are going in. And other communities like Cleveland and elsewhere around the country, like Kansas City and LA, are also doing that. So that's a great possible pathway to look forward to solve some of those key equity and access issues. Any last thoughts you want to leave listeners with in terms of vision for charging in the community for motorists?
Yeah. I think, location decisions really should come down to strategy, like making sure that we have chargers that are fit for purpose and easy to use, right? It's not just about getting numbers up. It's not just about like having the most charging stations in the country or something. It's about having access for everyone, having the experience of using the charging stations be smooth, having it be affordable, having the charging stations be powered by renewable energy, right? These are all things that we're thinking about talking about as a community and kind of in the industry more broadly speaking. There's conversations about an integrated charging app experience and how can we just, reduce the barriers as a whole, right, to this, because it is a shift in behavior. Folks are used to filling up at the gas pump, and this is new. So we have to make sure we make it as easy as possible, as accessible as possible for everyone. So that's really what we're trying to do.
That's great. And obviously, the Smart Columbus website is a great resource on all these fronts. And then I know you all host webinars and have even, as we kind of get back to more and more in-person stuff, have the Experience Center where folks could even attend live events. Anything else you'd want to mention for locations of resources to follow up on any of your points?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage folks to stay tuned for the City of Columbus releasing their climate action plan in November. That's going to be a really big moment for the community, and it's really going to take everyone stacking hands to make that happen. So definitely want folks to look out for that, and we're just really excited to continue the work and have an impact. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And for folks, definitely check out links to all those things Alex was highlighting. Really appreciate your time, Alex, and thanks for Smart Columbus's work. Good to talk with you.
You too.